There's a lot of talk on whether students are going to use AI to cheat, which they definitely are going to. AI has made it that much easier to cheat, and it is incredibly frustrating to spend your time reading something that someone else did not spend their time writing. I certainly hope that there will be technology that helps detect whether someone has used AI to cheat, but that being said, there's no type of cheat blocking technology that is going to make teaching the same as it was before AI. My name is Roxana Eldon. I run the Maintain and Stay Sane program for teachers, which helps teachers make the job and their lives more manageable. And here are a few thoughts about how to define and approach cheating in the age of AI. The first thing to keep in mind is that it is not useful to think of using new technology as cheating. So yes, having AI write an essay that you then turn into your teacher and pretend you wrote it, that is cheating. But using new technology in and of itself is not cheating. I'm currently watching the CNN documentary series about the 60s. And one of the things that this documentary series made me realize is that one of the major things that the civil rights movement did was take advantage of television, which at the time was a relatively new technology. There were things that were happening in the American South during the Jim Crow era that were kind of happening in secret. Even if they could be described, it would be really hard for people to picture some of the ways that African Americans were being treated in the American South. Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders, one of the things that they did that really made that movement a success was that they got these things on television. That was part of the strategic genius of what the civil rights leaders did at that time. Back then, there just weren't many ways to make sure something ended up on video and ended up in a public place where people could see it. But if you got something on TV, you suddenly had the whole nation's attention. Fast forward to today, it's 2026. I'm recording myself talking to you in a home office on my own computer, and I have almost complete confidence that I can get this video out to where people can see it. It is just no longer that hard to get video footage of something or to make that video footage public. What I don't have confidence of is whether it's going to get a lot of attention. We're a long way past the time when people were deciding between just a few TV channels. It is a lot harder to get everyone's attention. It's hard to get even one person's attention. There are so many different pulls on people's attention. One of the reasons that it is not cheating to use new technology is because our students are going to be in a world where that technology exists, and it's going to have different challenges based on everyone having access to that technology. Another reason it's not useful to think of this technology as cheating is because often there's kind of a gray area around when students even are using AI. There will be students who will be extremely meticulous in using technology exactly the way they're allowed to, and bless those students. And there will be students who are going to try to cheat and get around the rules and get around the heart of the assignment no matter what. But there are also students who don't want to cheat, but they don't feel that strongly about how they're using this technology. And this technology is now built into everything. This technology is built into so many of the tools that students use that it can almost be difficult to know where one thing stops and another begins. I mean, is autocorrect cheating because you're not spelling things correctly on your own? If autocorrect is okay, how about autofill? Now, how about when autofill can finish a whole paragraph for you? How about when one of these editing programs can suggest a better way of phrasing your work? Eventually, it becomes not your writing, but it's not actually as clear as it might seem to be. And then even something like spell check, you're so expected to integrate that into your work that most teachers would be annoyed if there are a ton of spelling mistakes in typed work that could have been caught by spell check. And there's definitely going to be a version of that with AI. There's going to be a version of human teachers thinking, like, why didn't you have AI do this part of the quality control of what you turned into me. But at the same time, how do we still make sure that students are doing the mental heavy lifting that makes their brain stronger? Because you don't just want the assignment done, you want the student to have done it. Or at least you want the student to have done the part that is the most important for them to learn from. With that in mind, a starting point for thinking about how to teach humans in the age of AI is, how do you teach a student who is not trying to cheat in your class? What do those students need to know for the future? And how can you as a teacher help them get there with or without AI? Or I should say, using AI when it makes sense and avoiding AI when it doesn't make sense. One of the first things that is now important for teachers is to communicate to your students what is an acceptable use of AI in your class. What do you consider cheating? And then what do you consider an acceptable amount of help to get from this new technology? And then how are students supposed to know the difference? Here are some starter guidelines that you can share with students to help them use AI in a way that is helping them learn and not cheating. First, students should ask themselves, if I asked a human being to do this for me, would it be cheating? So for example, it would not be cheating to ask a friend to help you brainstorm ideas, or ask a parent to proofread your paper, or ask for help finding alternative ways to say something or examples of a point that you're trying to make. It also wouldn't be cheating in most cases if you asked a fellow human to help you fact check something. In fact, all of these are things that professional writers do for one another, and they're also things that students with supportive family members at home might be getting help with on their homework. On the flip side, asking someone to write a paper for you and then turning it in as your own work would be cheating. Second, students should ask themselves if feedback on this assignment will give them actual feedback on whether they have learned something. And here, it is okay for you to share your own experience as the human who will be grading these assignments and how you feel when an assignment takes you longer to grade than it did for the student to work on it. But here you also want to frame it as your job as a teacher is to make sure students are learning something. If the assignment does not show whether students have learned anything, it's a waste of your time, and they are also not getting what they need out of the class. And the final thing to make sure students are clear on is, what is the actual mental muscle that should be getting exercise from this assignment? Ask students to think about whether they are getting that exercise. Are they smarter or mentally stronger for having done this assignment? And of course, that brings up an even harder question. What does it mean to be mentally strong in the age of AI? What should you even be teaching students these days? That's what I'm going to talk about in the next video on this playlist about teaching in the age of AI. You will find the link to that playlist in the description underneath this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.